Aloha synergists, this one is all about our big toe. And this is really the bedrock for all of our meaning, all of our motivation, how we even decide what is important, what is a priority, what are our intentions. Big theory of everything is big. It's not just a little theory of everything in a limited little scope. We are going to expand this, make it as comprehensive as possible. Well, that's our lifelong journey of figuring out what is going on, basically. So that's what part one is, getting to know our big toe, your big toe. Throughout this video, I'm going to use individual and collective terms kind of interchangeably. We do all have our individual big theory of everything, and that may cross over with other people's theories or not. You know, a lot of people believe different things and have a different understanding of how the universe works and different strengths and weaknesses within that. But as we learn more, we need to update our big toe. We can do this consciously. I mean, it's going on subconsciously, so we may as well get aware of it and be able to refine that process a little bit better. And then part three is about the importance of top to bottom alignment. And this is where we really build the motivation to have aligned action and never slip back. We stay on track, don't slip back. For the most part, at least, so we always get back on if something happens, because we can see how this lines up to everything else important in all of life and existence. As big as we can comprehend, to the smallest details, we all want it to be working together in the big system, yeah? So getting to know your big toe, we're going to be talking about the foundations of theory in general. We're going to be talking about some of the big pictures, some of the small details, and how the theory is formed. So remember, your big theory of everything is a model. It is not the real thing. It is a model. This is a very important detail. A lot of people sometimes forget this, just like they forget words are symbols for real things. And then we have a whole bunch of wars about the word God and whatnot. This is not it. It's just a model, and it's a working model. So we're updating it continually, right? And the usefulness of your model is based exclusively on its ability to explain the data. So what is the data? The data, or empirical facts as Einstein would call them, are any and all of the experiential truths that you and others have accumulated about the nature of reality. Now, there's a funny line there between your experiential truths and others, because you might perceive something to be true, which another would perceive to be as delusional or hallucination or whatnot. And how do you find out what is true? Well, your big theory of everything helps net that together in a way that makes sense. Now, it may be tempting to kind of draw that line. It was like, this is what I experienced, and that's all I can know for sure. And there's a certain amount of that that's reasonable. But also, us individually, we are probably not going to be witnessing the results of like hadron colliders and going to the far outskirts of the universe ourselves and experiencing it for ourselves, while others might dedicate their lives to a certain thing in particular and find out a ton about that. And that's why reading more than just the conclusions on a lot of scientific articles is important, because you get to see how they came to those conclusions in the first place. And for instance, even just reading an article like that, you might read the experiment and come to a different conclusion that creates a different theory, basically a different next hypothesis that is more true and more useful possibly than the conclusion that the actual scientists running that experiment came to. This is a very important detail to all theories in general. The most useful theories explain the most stuff, thus help us make better choices moving forwards, with the bare minimum assumptions. So when we are developing any credible theory, number one, we want to minimize the assumptions. And you might think, well, what if you had a theory without any assumptions at all? It wouldn't be a theory. Number two, we want to simplify the assumptions that we do have to the most basic level, wherever possible. And yes, we want to simplify, and what is most true is usually able to be expressed quite simply, but we do not want to oversimplify it to the point where it is no longer very useful. It's just too vague and fluffy. So what are the fundamental assumptions that your toe is founded on? You may not have super clear answers to that at the moment. You may not even know how many assumptions you have. I bet you can get it down to about 2 personally. Now, if you're unsure of where to start here and this video doesn't answer all of your questions, which I'm sure it won't, then there's a big fat resource here that I will tell you about towards the end of the video, which can help you dramatically in forming your own big toe. But now, drawing the guidelines of what this big toe encompasses, we want to get as big picture as possible. What are the outer limits? It may go beyond this universe. It may go beyond the thing that holds universes. It may go beyond that. When you are seeking to discover what the outer limits are, you might find that those limits seem to expand. As you try to observe and logically deduct further and further out, further transcendental levels, you might go, wow, this is really big. And you could assume that actually there's probably something bigger, because you see that pattern every time. Every time you try to get to that next level, you see it transcends and includes the thing before it, and it just seems to keep going. That's the nature of fractals, right? So that's zooming out on the fractal, and then we can also zoom in on the fractal to the smallest perceivable details of this reality. Things like the behavior of atoms, electrons, quarks, gluons, and whatnot. How do they play into our theory of how the universe works? You had quantum juxtaposition, quantum entanglement, all these tiny little details. Things like, why is the speed of light the speed that it is? And why does it function like it does? These are seeming facts of reality that need to be accounted for in a good theory. A good theory is explaining the data as comprehensively as possible. And keep in mind that with any theory, there's probably just huge blind spots at any given point, and there's huge unexplainable things within the current model of your theory, and that's why we need to update it, right? And then in the middle level, and that's the way I describe it, like mid-level theory, think, how does Earth, how does life forms on Earth, how does humanity, how does your life fit into this theory? What is its role within this big theory of everything? And if it's a really good theory, then it should make a lot of sense. And in my opinion, I feel like it should be inspiring, because you can feel meaning in your day-to-day life, in the life of pain and suffering even. You might be able to find meaning and purpose, and that things are actually doing something useful. I'm going to leave it really broad because I don't want to maybe influence you in the wrong direction, because I've got my toe and I feel like you should develop that on your own without too much external influence. If it feels really dark and depressing, like the universe just got set into motion, then it's all going to wind down and go cold and dead, and all of this is just zero purpose, then I encourage you to maybe think a little bit bigger, think a little bit deeper, see if you can find contradictions to an answer like that seems dead, cold, and uninspiring. Because, at least in my big theory of everything, we are here participating in the fundamental process of evolution, no matter what, no matter how much pain and suffering and whatnot, we are here doing something, experiencing for a reason. So that can help us through some tough times and help us build some deeper understanding through the things that seem really confusing and difficult. You're not going to have all the answers straight away. It is going to be a long journey of this life or more to explore the depths of this. So review, how are our toes formed? How is your toe formed? One is your undenied experiences of truth. And I say undenied because a lot of us are kind of experiencing a whole bunch of information at once and blocking out the vast majority of it because of whatever reason. I'm not going to dig into the details there, but there's a lot of information that we just don't pick up and process. The brain just eliminates it. It's not looking for it, so it doesn't see it, more or less. And that's why questions like this, having the mission of forming your toe, literally opens your mind to see maybe more of what is true. And then once we have that data, we have those experiences of truth. From there are logical deductions and inductions that we make from there, that we reason in from there. Quick note here, if your logical reasoning brings you somewhere that doesn't actually make sense with the original experience of truth, you're probably filtering it through an assumption that is not very accurate. Which leads us to the other things that form our toe are our individual erroneous beliefs and assumptions. We are not perfect. We believe things that are not true. We assume things that are not so. And that's on an individual level. We also have cultural beliefs and cultural narratives that can influence our thinking and form part of our toe for us. These may or may not be accurate, complete, or even useful in certain circumstances. And when we realize this, we can at least see it and go, maybe I'm just going to throw this to the side for now and rethink my theory to see if I come up with a better answer in the meantime. Remember, the things that are really going to be true and useful, they will come back. If you want to just empty your mind for a moment and have a fresh plane to experience from, that can make all the difference for new insights. Now, the resource that is unparalleled in helping you form your own big toe, guess what? It's called My Big Toe. It is written by Thomas Campbell. It is actually a trilogy. You can get it in a single paperback, though. It's a big, fat 800-page book. If you are serious about this, if you're serious about unlocking your limitless motivation, finding limitless meaning, and understanding the nature of reality on all of its levels and depths, then this is your companion resource. This is your guidebook, and it is quite a humorous read as well, because humor is lubricating to tough subjects. So it's not just a big, fat, boring 800-page book. It is written in a really fun way. So that is my book of the year for a couple of years. I love that book. I ordered a bunch of copies. A lot of my friends have my copies right now, and they're digging into it. They love it. My Big Toe. That is your resource, your companion. It's an extremely enlightening book. Opens the mind for sure. Part 2, updating your big toe. Like we said before, your theory of everything will likely always be very incomplete. The human mind, like we are, is a pretty limited thing in the grand scheme of things. Yes, we don't even know its limits, and it's way bigger than we probably think, but on every level, it's still probably quite limited to the entire nature of reality in all of its details, right? That's just so much information. So some of this is similar to what we just talked about, but in this section, we're going to be going over assessing the accuracy of one's current theory, current hypothesis, and looking for contradictions is part of that. But there's a difference between paradoxes and contradictions, right? So the way I split this is that some paradoxes are actually true, but contradictions reveal a lie, a mistruth somewhere. Now, when it comes to updating our big toe, the most essential mindset is being open-minded and skeptical. So we can't be so open-minded that our brain falls out and we just accept things without identifying what is really true and useful in there. But we can't be so skeptical either that we have a closed-off mind to new information, new data that contradicts our current theory. And this is essential because you are going to come across information that conflicts with your current working model of reality. A lot of people face this with things like ghosts and whatnot. Ghosts maybe don't fit into their current working model of reality. But if they had an undeniable experience with something like a ghost, then they might have to question what is actually going on. Rather than just shutting it out, saying it wasn't real or whatever, they might need to reassess their theory of how things are, because suddenly there's ghosts in it, for instance. Ghosts to some people are an example of unexpected information. To others, they might be an everyday occurrence. We need to be open-minded enough to be able to witness this unexpected information, but skeptical enough to see where it contradicts with other parts of our theory. And that will either reveal where our theory is weak, incomplete, or erroneous, or that we do not actually understand what we were witnessing in the first place because we may have witnessed it in a distorted way. Which is why we recommend, instead of clinging to an incomplete or erroneous theory that limits your vision of what is possible and true, we want to practice witnessing reality without assumptions and then forming our theory based on what we observe to be true. I know that probably seems obvious and true and like that makes sense, but how often do we neglect this practice and deny what we actually see and try to force it into our current way of thinking? Most of us are so blind to our own thought processes that this is happening all the time and we are not even aware of it. So why does this matter in a health and fitness course? Well, part 3, the importance of top to bottom alignment, hopefully will answer this question for you. When we review our daily experiences and actions in reference to the top level purpose, which our toe defines, then we can see how we are lining up with what is most truly important or where we are off track. And I bet for you, if you are here, having a base level of fitness foundation is important to your purpose, to your part to play in the big unfolding of reality. I know for me, it certainly is. Even though this human form is going to die, making the most out of this life is really important. So living with all the strength, mobility, endurance, all that holistic fitness as much as possible, and keeping health span in mind, so I am able to do the things that are important well into my later years. That is important. That is worth investing in. And if I do not do the actions that matter today, then they won't happen, because all I'm living in is today, right? So that's why every day this is important, top to bottom alignment. Now, part B is a little bit of commentary on how we may slip up and act incongruent to what matters most. And of course, get back on track, because if we have the understanding, it really makes living out of alignment kind of impossible in the big picture. So wouldn't that be cool if missing your workout or eating bad foods would be practically impossible, because you have this motivation and meaning system set up? And that is why it is relevant to this health and fitness course. That is why it is an essential ingredient to us understanding what is most important in the first place. So let's explore this topic of reviewing our daily experiences and actions in reference to our top level purpose and our top level missions. If we understand what the top level purpose of all of this consciousness going on is, then that's the foundation for our life goals, our big purpose, right? And then the big purpose of our life is the foundation for the goals that we set, the goals that are important to us. And this goes all the way down the goal stack. Here, the 5-year goals are the base for the 1-year goals. The 1-year goals are the base for the monthly and quarterly goals. And the quarterly goals are the base for our daily missions that move the needle and actually put the rubber on the road. When we see this alignment of every level working together, every level unfolding in this present moment, then it becomes very, very hard to get off track. That is, if our big toe in the first place is full of opportunity to make meaningful progress. There are a lot of scientists and whatnot that came to the conclusion that life was cold and meaningless, and that consciousness was some mechanical operation and nothing matters. Not what I think is most true and useful. If it is full of opportunity and meaningful progress, then that means every day we can make tangible progress on what is most important. That is top to bottom, bottom to top. It is all together at once. That is why every day I observe the fundamental process of evolution playing out on multiple levels, in suffering, in joy, all of it. Every day I think of how my thoughts, words, and actions are contributing positively to my core purpose and to my life goals, and thus the biggest things in my theory. And every day I review with the simple question of, did I live in alignment with my deepest values today? Because where are my values based in? Where do our deepest values come from? I feel like my values go a little bit further than just humanity, just my individual life. Because I try to find values that even go beyond humanity and into consciousness itself and what we are doing here as conscious beings. But part B here, slipping up and getting back on track no matter what. Well, why do we slip up in the first place? If we understand this theory, or we think we understand it at least, why would we sometimes seem to act against our values, sometimes not live in alignment with what we have declared as most true and important to us? Why does that happen? Well, our unaligned thoughts, words, or actions and whatnot must come from some degree of ignorance. We remember that, one, our theories are not perfect, but also, even if we have this amazing theory that's very true and accurate, sometimes we do things that seem to be against our best intentions and our best goals and everything like that. Why does it happen? Why would we maybe slip and binge eat or binge drink or something, or not do our workout like we said we would do? And this goes for really big decisions too, not just the little daily ones. Well, my theory has a bit of an explanation for that too, because you can logically conclude that there's certain programs running, and the programs don't require much consciousness. And a lot of our human operations are running on unconscious programs. Now, these old programs may not be running on the latest update of our big theory of everything. So we might become aware of them and have to kind of fight against them to a certain extent to change them. That's where willpower can be useful, because you need to actively put consciousness in there to choose a new route. You might notice this mechanical direction, in your brain and your body and whatnot being taken, and you might have a moment of consciousness there, we're like, and you steer the ship away from that mechanical program being acted out, that habitual response to a certain trigger, right? That's why the more conscious we are, the harder it is to slip up. But I have not met anybody that is perfect in this life, right? Which is why all of us sometimes look back and feel like we did not live in alignment with our most important values, and we did not make the progress we knew we were capable of on the most important missions, at least on a smaller time frame. Now, besides from just resolving to do better, trying to do better, when we mess up ourselves, or maybe we externally witness a lot of unnecessary pain and suffering of ignorance and just blah, we may be able to observe how the fundamental process of evolution is being carried out regardless, however long it takes. Because pleasant or unpleasant, consciousness is learning and experiencing. And that is at least based on my T.O.E, because the assumptions basically is that the fundamental process of evolution is a thing, and consciousness is fundamental. Consciousnness is the only thing that really matters. It's the only baggage we get to take, and it is the thing that makes up everything that exists. So you can see how something like this would be a logical deduction from those two assumptions. That's a pretty simple theory, right? Consciousness is primordial. Consciousness is the fundamental base of everything. If those two things are true, then it would seem to be true no matter what level of reality we look at, and down to the smallest details, the smallest little things, it would have to make sense the whole way. And so far, it does seem to make sense to me. A little soundbite for us when we maybe are looking back and feeling bad because we have not acted in total alignment with what we think is most true and good. We can think, well, moving forwards, we can act with more understanding and more integrity than before. I think, what is the alternative? Man, we would want to run really, really fast away from having less understanding, integrity, and alignment than yesterday. That is not the way we want to evolve. Well, that would be devolving, right? So when we frame it like that, slipping backwards for too long seems just impossible. Sometimes the ugly situations we find ourselves in are the expression of what is already going on inside of us, and we don't realize it until some external event manifests. Even that can be looked at as a step forwards, because you are more aware and you develop more understanding and are able to move forwards in a more mature way, even though it looked like life was good and then life was really hard and you're moving through that. Well, the challenging moments are sometimes the most important steps forwards. That is where we build understanding and awareness rapidly, usually. So before we go here, quick quiz of what is integrity. One definition is strict adherence to a moral compass or moral code, which is probably defined by your big toe and the values that naturally arise from that. Transparent honesty and complete congruency in what one thinks, says, and does. We probably are not operating with 100% integrity right now, but we are working on it constantly to get it a little bit more every day. Action steps moving forwards. There is an agreement here if you want to take it and plant the seed in your mind, speak it out loud, write it down. I agree to discover truth and develop a more useful big theory of everything every day. This, of course, is an ongoing mission that integrates with every other life activity, so it's not another thing, it's not another piece of homework. It is always going to be operating. And it is the little thing in there that reminds you of your purpose, reminds you what you're working on, even in the dullest moments, the most stressful moments, the most challenging moments, the most educational moments, whatever it is, you have that theory working, refining, getting better and better to make things make more sense and help you operate more effectively. Remember, check out that resource, My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell, if you want to dig into this in a much, much, much deeper way than this little video. All the love you can handle. See you next time.